Well, thanks so much for tuning into the trade setup. I'm Neeraj Shah. It's a penultimate day for the budget. And mind you, from amongst the key things to monitor, Asia will have fairly sedate uh, clues simply because of the fact that much of these markets will be shut at some point of time or the other for the lunar holidays. So you've got to keep that at the back of your mind. However, let's start off with the key news makers and also look at what the US markets did for it. So amongst the key news, the US markets bounced back very strongly in Friday's trade. Crude continues to gain. The Coros grows for about $100 per barrel, which is a very important thing. And Asian cues are to be studied, like I said, due to the lunar holidays. So the US markets, exceptional strength on Friday, a very good bounce back. The Nasdaq closed, I think, about 3% higher. And the best part, as you will see about the US market performance from a bull's perspective, is that they closed at the highest point of the day. So the movement was very, very strong, and seems that on such a close, it seems that it could be poised for a bit more. So I think that's what most people who look at these markets very closely on a technical basis told me about the US market trend and the way it closed. So that's probably good news. By the way, commodities, equity markets are not the only ones which bounce back. So they only bounce back. They've been correcting for the last few days. Commodities have a different setup, if you will. If you just look at what the commodity space has been doing, and this chart on the Bloomberg terminal, which shows how commodities have climbed for 6 weeks in a row, even as stocks have fallen. So if there was one quadrant that traders needed to park themselves into, it was probably commodities and not equities in the last 1 month. Be that as it may, yes, commodities have done very well, and Brent in particular is doing rather well for itself. We should pull up the SGX Nifty to just try and see what it is indicating from a trading perspective today, simply because of the kind of bounce that we've seen in the US markets. About 180 odd points, 17,272. So good start, good brisk start expected. Could it settle down post immediately? Who knows? Let's wait and watch. But we'll of course watch out for how the start is and what happens going ahead. By the way, just a quick synopsis of what happened on Friday. The MOV function will come up and just show us what we did in Friday's session in terms of specific stocks, in terms of market breadth. And of course, today will be a different kettle of fish, but the market breadth was pretty strong even in Friday's session. 332 advances to 165 decliners. And the only part was that in terms of gainers and losers, the losers had equal strength as the gainers. So you see a Mahindra Logistics down about 10%. You saw a bunch of others, the fertilizer names, Lao, Pala, etc., correcting 3, 4, 5%. And the same way in the other end, you saw what happened to an LIC Housing Finance, strong numbers, Root Mobile, very strong numbers, Lotus Labs, decent outlook, Coforge, since it had corrected so much, bounce back. So pretty much even Stevens out there. So that's one thing to monitor. The other thing to monitor is that always remember that trees don't grow to the sky. And the fact that TTML or Tata Teleservices Maharashtra is locked on a lower circuit for the 10th or the 11th session shows that if you bet on a stock without knowing its true fundamentals, on the downside, it could really churn your stomach. So that's the point I was trying to make. Nevertheless, let's take a look at the trade setup for the day today. What is it looking like? Well, I think move is expected today, but traders should be careful of selling at high levels. Last week, each of the high levels, so you've seen some consistent selling. Could it happen this time around as well? That's something that people should be wary of. I think BFSI continues to be the standout sector, isn't it? Even in last week's move, the only pocket in the green was BFSI. So that's actually the key thing, that banking and financial services continue to do really well for themselves. I think this week, for the next few days, potential budget beneficiaries, oil marketing companies, upstream oil companies, and ethanol are the key themes to monitor. With crude doing what it is doing, I think you ought to be monitoring that. A lot of you might be believing or thinking about what would it mean for crude to be at $100 a barrel. Could it be negative for India? Sure, it would be. At 100, 110, whatever it reaches, it's a net negative for India. But I think so that's a potential headwind. Could it have a big disastrous impact? Sure, it could. Could it make the market or FIs believe that there is some more weakness to India because of the CAD deficits that come up, or because of the issues that come up because of crude at 100, 110? Sure, it could. I think the question mark, as BofA Securities had told us in the interview last week, is that they are penciling in that crude would go up to $120 a barrel for the first 6 months, but eventually will come off. So the near-term pressures, sure. For an investor from a year's perspective, who knows? Nevertheless, that's one piece. I think FIs continue. This is, okay, Virat is pulling up a chart. Yes, oil on the boil. And yes, certainly, oil is looking like it is on the boil. FIs continue to sell. So I think about 5,045 crores sold in Friday's session too. So that's something also that people should be mindful of. Now, to stocks that should be in focus today. First, the earnings, and it's a heavy nifty earnings day. There is Tata Motors, Sun Pharma, and the oil marketing companies. Even HPCL comes up with numbers, though not a part of the nifty, and UPL. So these are five nifty names. And the non-nifty side as well, a decent set of numbers. In fact, it's a very heavy earnings week. HPCL important, DLF very important, Exide Industries, what they have to say is important. Navin Fluorine could it also show weakness in margins? That's the question that people would have. Dwarkesh sugar companies have been posting good numbers. This one could be interesting too. And KPIT Tech, it's such an expensive stock, but Goldman believes it could go to 1,000. The question in the minds of people is, can it show quarter after quarter that KPIT is putting the right foot forward? I think that's the thing that people would have in terms of a question when these numbers come out. Surely the likes of Navin Fluorine and KPIT cannot afford to put a foot wrong. Now, the stocks of the day today, or the stocks to monitor today, I think to my mind, the stock of the day has to be BEL. A superb set of numbers out there. Revenue is up 60% at 3,700 crores. EBITDA up 82%. Margins at 22.4 versus 19.7%. And net profit at 595 crores versus 278 crores. I don't think that this one put a single foot wrong. So you surely believe that BEL is probably one name that people will be watching out for when it comes to the session today. So that's the stock of the day according to me. Now that aside, other stocks to watch, and I'll come to IndusInd Bank, L&T, and some of the others. But I thought AU Small Finance Bank was important for multiple reasons. One, if you just look at the numbers, they look optically okay. NI was very strong. Gross NPS quarter on quarter came off. Net NPS quarter on quarter became better. So all of these look positive. But I think the points from two brokerage names stood out for me, and which is why I'm bringing this to you right up front. MK, for example, post the numbers, and AMBIT post the numbers, are saying, this is MK on AU Small Finance Bank, they are saying that we believe that this one runs a high growth risk model and thus should strengthen its risk compliance architecture and sustain counter-cyclical buffers, more so in light of its transition towards a universal bank. They have a hold rating, not a buy, irrespective of the numbers. And AMBIT have a sell rating on the stock, and they are saying that while AU Small Finance Bank has done what it has done, they would like to see sustainability before extrapolating them. They believe they continue to believe that maintaining high growth will be challenged due to the weak liability side of AU Small Finance Bank, and the current valuation. Look at that statement at 4.6 times FY23 book value per share factors in more than 22% loan growth and 19% ROE for the next 20 years, which is a bit stretched according to them. If AU Small Finance Bank starts higher, you might, who knows, you might see a bit of a selling. Keep in mind, it's also a stock that's rallied 22% in the last 1 month. So that's the view on AU Small Finance Bank. Do watch out for this one. Then Larsen and Toubro, good numbers. I just thought the takeaways were important. So give you the takeaway and the Kotak institutional view. So the results were in line. The good part was that the core ENC margins were at 8.5% on expected lines. The point about L&T's numbers is not what it delivered, but its guidance. So it reiterated the guidance on order inflow and revenue growth of low to mid-teens and flat margins. The point is, they also did a very important announcement about how the debt for Hyderabad Metro has been refinanced. Savings are to the tune of 100 crores a quarter, and that should give a bit of a solace to people. If the announcements and the talk around the Hyderabad Metro is probably important. Kotak says there are 2 or 3 brokerages that came out with the note, Morgan Stanley, Kotak, and some of the others, at least the ones that I saw. So Kotak's view was interesting. The target is 2450, but ignore the target. They say that we take comfort on the 9-month core business PAT exceeding pre-COVID levels, backlog being 11% ahead of pre-COVID levels, and the highest ever ordering pipeline for Q4. This is something that works for Kotak on terms of L&T, and therefore that's a stock that you should be monitoring. Now, I haven't given the graphics for IndusInd Bank, but I looked at a couple of brokerage views. So the profit, of course, rose 49.5% YoY on higher income, but Jefferies has cut the target price to 1220 from 1400. They say that while there is a beat on lower credit costs, the growth in loans softened a bit to 4% quarter on quarter, and slippages were high at 5%. turnaround in MFI is good, and the management has clarified that the whistleblower issues in MFI has provided for risks, tighter controls, and the CEO's appointment are the key, according to Jeffries. Goldman Sachs, of course, maintains a buy with a target price of 1400. They believe that they remain confident that the bank can deliver 2% ROA, 17% ROE by FY24, driven by 21% loan growth and 23% core PPOP CAGR. So, well, remains to be seen what this one does, but not essentially a stock that might necessarily react quite a bit. IDFC First Bank, NI up 13%, QOQ, PAT up 85%, gross NPAs, net NPAs, both do better. And therefore, in terms of banks, maybe AU Small Finance Bank and IDFC First Banks are the ones that you should be monitoring in the session today. I thought Solar Industries numbers were decent. Revenues were up 57%, as is the case with most companies in India Inc. Their margins took a bit of hit, as a result of which, or rather, the EBITDA was up only 34%, and as a result of which margins took a hit. And therefore, the net profit growth is only 29%, not as strong as the 57% growth, but 29% is a strong number. And this is the highest ever quarterly profit for Solar Industries in its history, which tells you a thing or two about how good the quarter has been and how the going is for solar. So maybe a stock that you should be monitoring in the session today. It could react. Some other stocks which could have a bit of a reaction. So Max Financial, okay, let's stick with this first, then go to the others. So stocks in focus include NMDC. They've hiked the iron ore prices by up to 350 per ton for Feb deliveries. Ganesha Ecosphere, wherein BofA Securities has bought about 1.62 lakh shares, and Welspun Corporation, wherein Cohesion MK Best Ideas, which is Madhusudan Kela company, has bought about 0.5% stake at 178 rupees a piece. Some others include a results impact that we will see in Max Financial, Info Edge, as well as Dixon. Max Financial, the numbers were much stronger in quarter 3 compared to the first 2 quarters. So that is something, and I think the MK note stated that the correction is unwarranted. Info Edge, wherein the numbers were good, IT world over would bounce back. Probably the likes of Zomato, PB Fintech, etc., would bounce back. I mean, every platform company, Nike, I think Morgan Stanley's raised the price target, so that would good. So I'm saying the platform companies could show a bit of an uptick, and therefore, as a result of which, Info Edge might show a bit of an uptick. So watch out for that one. And Dixon, the numbers left a bit to be desired, really, for a stock that's trading at 100 times current year earnings and 50 times next year, because it will virtually double its numbers. But for a stock that's trading at about 100 times, slippages are not quite good. The thing that I wanted to point out is Dixon has corrected a bit ahead of its numbers, and therefore, how much of a deeper correction as a result of these numbers remains to be seen. The guidance wasn't bad, so therefore, if there is a correction, the market might actually digest it, and the stock might actually see a bit of a bounce, simply because it's fallen ahead of the numbers and the guidance is strong. So therefore, do watch out and be careful if you're trading Dixon on the downside, just primarily on because of this factor. So viewers, that's the long and short of the trade setup. Lots of stocks that could react today. We presented a few to you. I'm sure there are some that I've missed, but I hope this is a good enough list any which ways. A bounce for sure. Does it get sold into is something you got to guard against, also because tomorrow is a budget day and the markets would be a bit cautious ahead of the budget. Even if the budget is increasingly starting to become a non-event, there will be things that you would want to monitor. The markets would be wary of, or the markets will be looking forward to. Therefore, trade light, if you will, and be careful of the higher levels. Thanks so much for tuning in today.